Now, welcome. Yeah, welcome to the September 3rd meeting of the San Luis Obispo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District Water Resources Advisory Committee. We'll do introductions first. Tom Burhan, District 4.
Oh.
Yes. Oh,
Do you want me to introduce myself?
yes, please.
Oh, sorry. I'm Carrie Porteous with Stantec. I'm from the Santa Barbara office, and I'm here to talk about the SB 552 water system consolidation report.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gabby Catherine, and I work with Carrie at Stantec, and I helped prepare this report.
Okay.
Brittany Howard, Water Resources Manager.
HP Water Resources Program Manager with the City of Salem. Tim Walters, Development at Large. John Winstead, Ag at Large.
Alejandro Celio, Silicon Valley Water Resources.
Nathan Reed, Ag Public Works, Water Utilities. Justin Reberg, University.
Up here. Christine, go ahead.
Oh, Christine Mulholland, Environmental at Large.
We're bringing environmental also at large. I guess we're at large.
In EB, the Mobile CSD.
David Chipping, environment at large.
Linda Chipping, also San Luis RCD alternate.
Steve Simpson, Chairman, San Juan Oasis. Greater District 4 alternate.
Peter Brown, Luciano, CSD.
Oklahoma State Water, Resources. Ron Burns, Resources, CSD. Scott Duffield, Heritage Grant, CSD. Lee Nesbitt, EPC.
Very good. And in the back. Very good. All right.
More parents, San Miguel CSD.
Who else online, Joey?
Yeah, so for the folks online, I will go ahead and call your name, and please feel free to unmute and introduce yourself. Starting with, let's see, Jules Tuggle.
Hi, Jules Tuggle, Grover Beach City Council. Thanks for having me.
You, Jim Marderosian.
Jim Marderosian, representing District 3.
Patricia Wilmore.
Trisha Wilmore, Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance, Ag at Large alternate.
Right, Harold Wright.
Harold Wright, Still County Public Works Finance.
Jeff Edwards.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Jeff Edwards, and I'm in the private sector from Los Osos.
Right, Mark Zimmer.
Good afternoon, Mark Zimmer, General Manager for Golden State Water Company.
Matt Watkins.
Good afternoon, Matt Watkins, B Sweet Citrus, District 3 alternate.
Michelle Frederick.
Hi, my name is Michelle, and I am the Assistant Deputy Director with the State Water Board in the Division of Drinking Water for the Central Branch. Thanks.
Thank you. Matthew Scudato.
Hello, yeah, Matthew Scudato. I'm with Santa Barbara County Water Agency.
All right, is there anyone else online who'd like to introduce themselves that I may have missed?
Seth Peak, Atascadero City Council.
Tamara Parent, alternate San Miguel CSD.
Jenny Williamson, County Public Works Water Resources.
I think that's okay.
We had a couple people come in after we started the introductions. Want to introduce yourself?
Jamie Henderson, Hospital Water Company.
Okay,
Sarah Sternberg, Creekland Conservation.
very good. Anybody we missed? No, she did introduce herself.
I introduced myself.
Oh, yeah, well, I just. Okay, do we have a quorum?
Yes, 19.
19,
Yes.
very good. All right, so the second item on the agenda is the approval of the June 4th, 2025 WRAC meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve or modify. Christine?
Yes, item number 5, receiving the update on Coast Blue. And the first paragraph, John Burnham, there is a typo in parentheses I was confused, which is why I'm bringing it up.
Oh, yeah,
For
thank you.
suite or projects, but later on, it said suite of projects, so I squared it with myself, but just in case someone else gets confused about that in the future. And on that same item at the bottom, there's a motion with 4 votes, which I don't believe we can have. So something's either abstain or no, but an extra 12 to 1 to 6. At the end of that
Oh, yes.
item, E, number 5, ED moves the motion.
Right.
Yeah, there were six members left before the item vote took place.
What?
So we had 12 for, 2 against, 1 abstention, and 6 were absent from the original quorum. Is that?
Yes, so in the voting log, it notes, because the June meeting went pretty long, so people were leaving in the middle of the meeting, which was understandable. We went longer than the normal time. So what that 6 represents is the 6 members who were present for the quorum, but absent for that particular vote.
I've never seen that done before, that confused me. All right.
Yeah, and I will say, I do understand that it doesn't show what those numbers are. What's the 12, what's the 2, what's the 1, what's the 6? It is, yes, on the next page, but we could make it clearer in the minutes. We could clarify that.
Thank you.
So,
Okay. Any other comments before someone makes a motion to approve or modify?
So approved as modified.
All right, is there a second?
Second, excellent minutes.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 2 abstentions, 3.
that was Linda, John, and Lee.
Okay, very good.
Just a moment, please.
Sure. Okay, then on to the main item for today, the presentation from Stantec on water system consolidation. And Brendan, I think you were going to introduce the item.
Yeah, just real briefly, I'll go ahead and invite Carrie and Gabby, you guys can go ahead and come on up. Just real quickly, we had Stantec with us, I believe virtually, in April to discuss this water system consolidation plan that they were working on. They shared some bit about what the term risk was, and the methods and the methodologies, the data sets they were using. A lot of it is from the state water board kind of prescribes a process for evaluating consolidation opportunities. And now we're back here today with the final report. And I just wanted to mention briefly, we've talked about SB 552 a number of times. I thought, oh, I'll go through my 6 slides, and I'm like, no, I'll just say it. And that SB 552 had some county drought planning requirements. And in our county, for us, a number of those requirements are in other plans, such as our hazard mitigation plan, or we've already established a drought task force at the county. But one of the things we didn't have was, quote, a county shall consider consolidations for existing water systems and domestic wells. And so when SB 552 became law, DWR contracted with Stantec to provide technical assistance services to counties or agencies who are trying to meet SB 552. And we signed up for this one piece here. And so Stantec has been working for DWR, but on our behalf. And that's a little bit about the background. And I think with that, I'm just going to hand it over to Carrie. And this is our main item for today. So I'll let Carrie decide how she wants to take questions during or just at the end. But I hope we have a nice discussion. And yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, questions in the middle would be fine with me. It comes up on the slide, it makes it a little easier to answer at that point in time. So thank you for the introduction. Do I get to control the slides?
Try it again. Oh, you know what? There's a little in the bottom. Sorry, it's my mistake.
So we all did our introductions and we're gonna talk a little bit about the project. I'll go over the background information again that we had presented a couple months ago about the methodology. We're gonna go over the consolidation results and some implementation considerations. And like I said, we can intersperse questions as we go. So this slide is to talk about the priority basins and to highlight some of the water quality issues and to point out the larger water systems. And so it's kind of hard to see. So we're just talking about the critical overdraft status of some of the various basins and talking about the high priority sites. So that's what this was kind of focused on. And we wanted to point out that there's a lot of existing wells. I know we had highlighted how many before. There's like over 15,000 wells.
How many?
15,175 domestic private wells. So, and that well information came through the county, the domestic well portion of it. The state small water systems list and the public water systems list came through the state data. So these are the public water systems within the county. There's a variety of different types of public water systems, but there's a total of 83 systems that are fully located within Santa Barbara County.
Just a quick note.
Yes.
This looks like Garden Farms is just an appendage of the Mutual Water Company, but even though it doesn't seem to have a label, or is that the label down below on across Highway 58 Garden Farms?
It's
like
middle. I see it. There is a label for it there. Yes.
Is that the label?
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
On the well index where you counted all the wells for domestic, did you just go back to 1965 or the year that the county started recording the wells, even if there were wells dug before 1960? Someone else?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So there could be a whole lot more older wells. Yeah, I reference to that. Yeah.
Thank you, Brittany. So we followed the state's 5-step method that went over basically trying to figure out and identify which water systems could be potentially receiving systems and which ones can be joining systems. We went through a GIS analysis to apply a distance criteria for those systems to see if they could, in theory, connect to that receiving or joining system. We calculated a cost for that based on the criteria, and based on that cost analysis, we evaluated whether or not that consolidation could be fundable. So it's not necessarily about if they are interested at this time. This is purely a GIS exercise, mathematical exercise to bring forth some options for some consolidation between two different systems to further the conversation. So there needs to be maybe some additional contacts need to be made through the county with those particular agencies to talk about, is this something that they're interested in? Have they already started a consolidation process? So this is just the first step that should happen. So this is just a review of the methodology. We'll go through kind of what a receiving station and a joining station is. So the receiving station is the larger one. The joining system is the smaller system. So usually the joining system is the smaller size public water systems. It could be the state small water systems, an ungrouped amount of domestic wells, or a grouping of domestic wells. And we'll go into what I mean by grouping of domestic wells. So the joining criteria for a public water system, the state wanted us to focus on the failing water systems, or the failing water systems would need to have over or less than 1,000 service connections. And any of the other safer status would need to have less than 500 service connections. For state smalls, any status, so we didn't have any particular criteria to become adjoining. And then ungrouped wells, we did not have any status, and same with domestic grouped wells. or ungrouped wells. The grouping of the wells, we grouped domestic wells to see if there was at least one well per 10 acres. So that comes into play with there's a lot of domestic wells spread out throughout the county. And we wanted to make sure that we had a density of wells to see if they could group together and form a system and consolidate within those domestic wells. So a receiving system, the public water systems are the receiving systems. These are the larger systems. We looked at excluding the failing any public water systems. And then for state small and domestic wells, it's basically any ones that can, the nearby system. So a receiving system, we're really focused on the public water systems. So the distance criteria, this plays into how one system, a joining system would connect to a receiving system in terms of, is it likely that a pipeline could be constructed to be able to join together? So for a public water system, or let me go over the 3 different types of joining. There's intersect, where the receiving system is surrounding the joining system. There's the route, where the receiving system, there's a pathway, a roadway from the joining system to the receiving system. And the route intersect mostly has to do with state small water systems or domestic wells that are between a receiving system and a joining system on that roadway. If there's a small distance between them, we try to see if we can intersect them along that route. So the distances came into play in terms of whether or not they were distance feasible, whether they had met this viability criteria. So for a public water system, for intersecting, obviously there's no distance because you're surrounding the system. A route, we use less than 3 miles. So between a public water system and state small or grouped wells, we looked at, or between 2 public water systems, sorry, we looked at less than 3 miles. For state small water systems, because it's a smaller entity, we looked at a smaller distance. So these distances came from the state. So for a route, we looked at less than 0.38 miles. And for a route intersect, we looked at less than a quarter of a mile. And then for grouped domestic wells, for the route, we looked at anything less than 3 miles, and ungrouped, there is no intersects. And then the routes, we use the same as the state smalls. So for the cost estimate, we looked at the linear footage between the receiving and the joining system, and we calculated a pipeline cost based on that linear footage. We looked at basic connection fees, which we understand do not necessarily represent the actual connection fee of the receiving system, but it's an estimation that the state gave to just put a number to it. It's basically an average that was from that document. We put a cost to the service line connection costs. So a cost per each connection, same thing. It's not necessarily representative of how much it costs in this particular county or through each individual contractor. It's just supposed to be able to look at these options holistically. There's administrative costs that we put together, which is 15% of the total pipeline costs. CEQA fees we estimated. And then for the route intersection, we basically assumed that the receiving system would pay for that cost. So let's say domestic wells are along that route intersect. We didn't add any CEQA fees to that particular cost.
A question for you.
Yes.
Like the high-speed rail, the big issue was the cost of the route in terms of land acquisition. Is that part of this?
So this is only focusing on pipelines in a roadway. So we didn't do as the crow flies, we did it by a roadway distance. So we assumed that the pipe could be put into a roadway. And so that's why there's quite a few options where the distance looks really close, but then the route along the road is not.
So you don't have to worry about severance, in other words.
Severance.
Severance, in other words, if you're cutting across somebody's field.
Right.
And bisecting it, you often need to pay more than just what you're taking.
Exactly. Yeah, we're not
Functionality.
including easement costs or severance costs. We're only looking at putting in pipelines within actual public roadways. And so that was part of the GIS analysis, was a routing of those roadways.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. Would this be prevailing wage if it's under the state or county?
Yes. So the cost estimate also included contingency. We added an inflation factor. We also added a regional multiplier. The San Luis Obispo County is considered a suburban county, so it's dictated to add a 30% multiplier onto that. And we added 10% for planning and construction and 15% for engineering services. And this was, remember, just to figure out if the project is viable for funding, not necessarily the actual cost of the project. So the funding viability calculations for a public water system would be with greater than 75 connections. We needed to estimate and have the total capital cost with all those different cost items, number of connections times $96,000 per connection. And with less than 75 connections, basically the total capital cost needed to be less than 7.2 million. For state small water systems, the capital cost would need to be less than 2 million to be viable. And then with grouped wells, with greater than 75 connections, there was an equation, and then with less than 75 connections, we also use that same 7.2 million. And then ungrouped domestic wells was the cost of $150,000 per connection. So that's basically assuming anything less or more than $150,000 for each ungrouped domestic well, that it would not be fundable. The one would be willing to pay that if it's more than $150,000. So based on all those criteria, with the distance criteria and the funding criteria, we started off with 83 total public water systems. We found that 25 of those public water systems met the receiving system criteria based on the number of connections. So they had greater than 500 service connections, and we looked at the safer status. So there was 0 systems that are failing, 3 systems that were potentially at risk, and 4 systems that were considered at risk. So out of those 83, we dropped it down to 25. And then for joining systems, so we started with 83. We have 58 public water systems that met the joining criteria, so that they have less than 500 connections. Remember, these are the smaller ones. So then 58 met the joining criteria, 45 of those then met the joining criteria and met the distance viability threshold. And then only 43 of those actually met both the distance and the funding. So we're down to 43 systems that could potentially join with a larger public water system. And of those 43 that met those criteria, 6 are considered failing, 10 are systems at risk, 2 are potentially at risk, 19 systems are not at risk, and 6 systems were not assessed. They don't have a safer status. And then in the south part of the county, this is just showing the map of it. It's still the same numbers that I just said, but it's listing basically the ones in the south county that could be potentially joining systems. Yes.
So this is a study, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
late. This is a study to see if there's a grant funding.
Right.
To do what?
To consolidate water systems that potentially might have some problems either now or in the future. It's just putting together more or less a list to help start the conversations.
So the city of San Luis Obispo, which I represent, has a policy not to wheel water beyond the rivers.
Right.
And one of the reasons for that, big one, is that induces sprawl. That's sprawling. So I think that public policy needs to be taken into account.
So at this point, all the different water systems policies, whether it's City of SLO or any other agency, they're not factored in at this time. We did come up and have a conversation after to then talk about which ones came up on the list and maybe which ones should have a further conversations and which one, because of known policies, that maybe not. So let me go through a couple more slides and that might help to answer your questions. So this is basically the list of just focusing on the at-risk or failing joining systems. So these are the joining systems that could potentially be having problems now or in the future. We know some of these systems, like the Higuera Apartments, which is a failing system. We know that they've already started the process for annexation with San Luis Obispo.
Right, the city approved it as an annexation.
Right.
But without annexation.
Exactly.
there's no-
Correct. So this particular list, which we talked about with the county, basically, we started to ask DWR, and we need to have some conversations further with the county and with LAFCO of this list, which ones have already started the consolidation process or annexation process, or have gone to that agency and asked, hey, we have some problems. So these are the ones we thought that should be focused on first, because these are the ones that are most at risk for a variety of issues that should be looked into consolidation first.
Please, we cannot read what it says in the blue block.
So
What does it
the
say?
blue is just the safer status of the receiving system. So basically, all of the receiving systems are not at risk except for two of them. So the Morro Bay Public Works Department is considered at risk, and Golden State Water Company region is considered at risk.
So the blue.
So the blue is
not at risk?
not at risk.
Not
All
at
good.
risk. Okay, thank you.
They don't have a safer, they have a not at risk safer status.
And that's that those statuses are defined in this context by the state water board.
Right. There's a very long list of different criteria of what could trigger them to be at each different level.
The representatives are here to explain this, but we've got both Morro Bay and Los Osos at risk, and they're talking about a pipeline between Los Osos and the water line. And I thought that would be with Morro Bay. So it's an at-risk join and at-risk, or did I not understand that?
So which line, I'm sorry.
The two brown ones on the right-hand side.
Right,
Yeah.
so they're not joining together. So Rancho Colina Mobile Home Park would join with Morro Bay. This mutual water company would join with Golden State. It's just highlighting that Golden State has some problems. And yes, they're considered at risk, but they're a much larger entity that could be able to handle and weather and make those changes that they need to do to get out of the at-risk category. Just because you're at risk doesn't necessarily mean that they're failing and can't provide water to their customers. There's,
I'm led to believe that they're already here, that Los Osos is already trying to cost down with a pipeline down South Bay Boulevard might cost. So it would seem to me that.
There's a project unrelated to this.
Got it.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of difference between a consolidation where a water purveyor provides water service to a new set of entities, whatever the system that has wells. And then the project you're referencing is actually a pipeline to potentially connect to a different water source. So that's different than what a consolidation would be. And Oceana is up there, and actually, since you're asking, the Halcyon and Kenmar is underway. We do have a executed grant agreement with the state for those two systems plus two more. And our capital cost was close on that 7.2 million we showed on a prior slide.
okay.
A little closer than the 3.2 million that's up there in terms of capital costs. But you identified it correctly, and those two systems are under the consolidation process right now.
And that's great to learn, and we'll add that to some notes. Because we had an initial conversation with the county and with the state to try and figure out, based on information that they have, which ones are already in the process so they don't need to be focused on, and then maybe reaching out to the other agencies to figure out have these already started, are there conversations, or maybe it's just starting the conversation of, okay, Rimrock Water Company is failing. have they talked to Napomo yet? Or has Napomo talked to them? Is there a way that they can reach out? And it's really just putting together a focus list of some conversations that need to happen in the future. So joining state small water systems in the North County. So we started with 27 state small water systems and 8.
I just, for clarification, you just did public water systems?
Yes, and now we switched over to state small.
A different
water
classification.
systems. Correct.
Which are generally smaller.
Right.
Just wanted to make that point. So.
Yeah. So these are the joining state small water systems that would join with a receiving station. So these state small water systems are not trying to consolidate with ungrouped wells or grouped wells. These are state small water systems that are trying to join potentially into a public water system.
I'm again looking south of the Atascadero Mutual territory. It looks like we're looking at a portion, but far from the entirety of the Santa Margarita Ranch. Does this relate to their track 1, the domestic system on track 1, to the exclusion of the rest of the ranch and its wells?
So are you talking about the highlighted brown areas or the blue
The
areas?
highlighted brown area is the Atascadero Mutual Water Company, which includes most of the city plus south of Atascadero. South of that, it looks as if the blue is a small portion of the much larger Santa Margarita Ranch.
It's actually not. That's actually trying to represent the groundwater basin, the blue.
Oh,
So that's trying to
so that's
represent.
not adjoining area.
No.
Okay,
So
thank you.
the brown is talking about, the receiving systems.
So there's no proposal that any part of the Santa Margarita Ranch would join with.
There is no proposal for that.
Except for what's going on right now with the CSA 16, which is a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah. With the state's data and analysis, that's not. There may be things going on outside of this.
Right.
This
there are.
GIS analysis and work here. So like Santa Margarita Ranch, I don't believe is included. I don't think it shows up in here.
Right, and
But
it
that
has
doesn't
nothing
mean.
to do with the mutual water company. It has to do with the county service area.
It could, those things, it could be totally going on separately from this.
Thank you.
Sorry, Carrie.
That's okay. So we started with 8 state small water systems, or 27, and then 8 met the viability threshold, and those same 8 also met the distance and the funding threshold. So this is kind of hard to see of all the different ones, but like the green ones are the ones that met both the distance and the funding criteria. We're just trying to show kind of generally where they are. This is just a snapshot of the South County. Table is a lot easier to follow. And this table focuses on at-risk or failing joining state small water systems. So these are the 8 that I had mentioned. And they don't have a safer status, but they do have a water quality risk for those state small water systems, and all of them were ranked as a high water quality risk. So it lists out the name of the state small water system and the nearest receiving public water system. And all those public water systems in the dark blue are not at risk.
What risks are there in the water? Is that nitrates? Is that salt?
For the the water quality risk?
Yes.
Do you remember, Gabby?
This is just a component of the sigma status of the groundwater basin. So that's kind of what the groundwater basins that we're showing in the figures, that's when that comes relevant.
So,
you can kind of see the red ones are.
So it's not the water quality, it's the quantity.
It's the water quality
Could be a
within
lot.
the basin.
Could be, yeah, it's based on a lot of things. It could be the salinity of the basin, the saltwater intrusion. I think it could be. I see what you're saying. You're asking, could it be the water level? Could it be the production rate?
Well, right. I mean, if it's
I
sigma,
think it
you're
is just the
talking
water
about sigma, you're talking about how much water is there. If you're talking about water quality, you're talking about
think Sigma had a portion of it is related to water levels in production, but then another component of Sigma status is based on the water quality of that basin.
And we were only just looking at the water quality ranking of it.
Excuse me.
Yes.
And the connection, the capital cost, that is to connect between the, like, for example, Calendar and Sullivan Saves, that's what you're projecting as their cost.
And it's pretty minor and.
10,000 foot level.
Yes,
I mean, it's-
exactly. We try to use the same method so that they're all relative to one another. Not necessarily like we could actually construct it for that, but we try to look to see the reasonableness of it. And so, relative, this is actually the cheapest one. And it's probably because the distance is pretty short. Or it's the route intersects, so basically it's just looking at that very short distance. When there's another consolidation that could happen, this is on that route between the receiving and joining system, and it's add to it, basically.
In general, the water quality risk or the safer status could be any contaminant.
Right.
Doesn't matter whether it's.
We just wanted to, because the state small water systems don't have a safer status, we wanted some sort of indicator to understand that these are pretty important. And these small water systems might be having some trouble, or the basin that they're within might be having some trouble. That's kind of what just the general idea was for that.
I can share this after, DWR and the water board are also on our meeting, and they provided some links here in our Zoom chat, so I can get those
Thank you.
saved and added in on the source of the state water supply system water quality risk factor, and how that came to be high or medium or whatever. So I have some information I can provide after.
Yes.
I've got a general question on consolidation. If you've got a basin that's being drawn down by too much ag use, and it wants to join a basin, actually the big joining basin, whatever you call it, that is mostly domestic providers, are you shifting the risk to the domestic providers to provide the water for the ag overuse in the joint basin?
In that type of situation, I don't think a consolidation would likely happen because of that. But that's the conversation that maybe some of these agencies and these different smaller systems need to start having, at least to weather the next, mega drought. This is not necessarily that they must consolidate or that we're dictating anything. This is just to provide a first step to allow for some, hey, if you haven't already talked to your neighboring systems, these are the ones that maybe might need to reach out to, or they might be reaching out to you. And now you maybe understand that they might be having some problems. That's all that this was kind of the intent of, is that first step. So domestic wells, there is a lot of domestic wells. Remember, 15,170, I could barely read that, 8. So of those 15,000 wells, over 13,000 didn't meet a grouping criteria. So the density of them based on their location didn't allow them to be grouped together. So these particular ones, this is looking in the North County near Paso Robles. So of those, 3,000 or 3,500 wells did meet a distance viability threshold. So basically you can kind of look at, especially around Templeton and whatnot, there's a lot of green dots that are either fully surrounded by Templeton CSD. So there was over 1,500 wells that basically intersect with the receiving system, that they're surrounded by a receiving system, whether they're in the city of Paso or other different systems. Over 1,600 could be routed within that less than 0.38 miles, and 288 of those could be route intersected. That basically, if there's another system going on, they're along that route, they can join in together. And of those 3,500 that met the distance threshold, only a little over 18,000 actually met the funding viability threshold. Sorry, 1,800, yeah. And of those 394 wells were located in a high priority status basin, 784 wells in a low priority status basin, and 690 wells located in a fractured rock area. And then this is a picture of the ungrouped domestic wells in the southern part of the county, focused near San Luis Obispo and Pismo. So you can see that there's quite a few ungrouped wells, especially within the Golden State Water Company Edna area. And then there's a scattering of them throughout the San Luis Obispo area.
So, I have a question.
Yep.
So in the previous slide, there's a number of cases where you aggregated the groove wells into a new district. Are you implying that those aggregated in a new district would be self-sustaining and would not be prone to be joining the receiving?
So when you start grouping the wells, is that, they could be self-sustaining, they could join. We just thought it was very interesting that there was a large, really dense amount of private wells in certain areas. And it maybe gave them some options. So whether they join together and create a system, whether they join together and then, or maybe just connect over to the city of Paso. There was some interesting things that were happening, especially in these particular areas, that there was a lot of wells within just a neighborhood.
It seems a natural next step to say, if you evaluated those as a system, would you call it a joining or a receiving system?
That could be the next step, yeah.
But you haven't done.
No, we have not. This was just looking at, well, hey, these are a lot of grouped wells, and maybe there needs to be some discussions about, should those grouped wells become a water system? Should those grouped wells group together, and then could they maybe become a joining system? There's definitely some options. Sorry.
When you start talking about this consolidation, and then joint grouping of wells, some wells are going to bring in more water than others. Have you had the discussion on if you're joining an already established system, you're going to be rationed a certain amount, or do you get in the future percentage wise what you bring to the group? Your neighbor brings in 30 acre feet and somebody else brings in 2 acre feet, but we're all in one big one now. Do we all get to draw the same amount? That kind of a discussion on the joining and then the dispersing, what kind of balance do you have for who brings, who takes, who gives?
So no, the short answer is those discussions have not started to happen. Those are all very valid questions on how to put together or group together a system. You know, those are part of the negotiations that would happen, whether or not you become a system or join a system. Those are all discussion points, but no, we didn't go into that depth.
Quick, just me, jump in on this real quick. This Christine's question, in general, when there's a system of wells that are consolidating into a typical water purveyor, most of the time those wells are decommissioned. If they're for drinking water in particular, the state will require that those wells be decommissioned. And so that way, you know, you're solving the problem if there's contamination in that drinking water source, a new source that doesn't have any contaminants is being provided in that particular basin. That's just one example. That's what's happening in Oceana, where a lot of wells are being decommissioned. There's like some exceptions for prior water rights, or if you're just going to use the water for irrigation as opposed to drinking water. But I think your question is a very complex one. I think, to Stantec's point, there's kind of a high level analysis of what might be right for consideration.
Yes.
Relative to the question of the possibility of rationing and so on, if a small district consolidates with a large district, and the people in the small district have elected their own district board, would the consolidation mean you would have the smaller boards simply disappear and the smaller district be dissolved under the governance of the board of the larger one? And if so, do the people, I presume the dissolution of the district would have to go through LAFCO.
Yes.
What is the public process if the people in the smaller district object?
So yes, it typically is dissolved. Yes, it does need to go through the LAFCO process. There is a process through LAFCO that you can make your objections. But I'm not familiar with what happens when those objections are made. But there is a very standard process for it.
They can recall the board members too.
Our question is clarification. So for these domestic wells, is that city wells that are just used for irrigation?
Gabby, do you recall?
I think irrigation wells were excluded.
Solely irrigation wells, but ones that serve domestic and irrigation were included. There's a lot of wells.
I question.
Okay. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the grouped domestic wells. These are ones that met a density criteria. So at least one well within 10 acres and try and group them together. And it wasn't necessarily to say that they should be grouped together, but maybe it's an option, it's a possibility to talk about. So we started with, over 15,000 total domestic wells, 2,800 domestic wells within 26 groups meet the density-based criteria, and 1,400 wells met the distance viability criteria within those grouped wells, and only 1,255 wells, which are in 9 groups, met the funding viability criteria. So of 6 groups are located within a high priority status basin, and 3 groups are within a fractured rock area. The only reason why we pointed that out was because it shows maybe the risk that those particular wells might have when you're in a high priority status basin or a fractured rock, that those particularly could have some issues in the future. So this is just a snapshot of North County of some of those groupings of the wells. We numbered them and counted up how many wells were within each group, just to maybe start the conversations or start the analysis of, hey, some of these neighborhoods, have they come together as a community and started talking about, could they form a water system or not? Or have they talked to their neighbors? It's really just to start off those conversations. And same thing for South County. This is just highlighting some of the grouped wells. There's not as many that are located in South County. The same thing, these are just the total overall numbers. So one of the things we also talked a little bit about our report is physical consolidation may not be possible or fundable based on the information we saw, but maybe managerial consolidation might be an option. And so we looked at maybe some possibilities of having those further discussions with some of those agencies. And managerial consolidation could be a variety of things. It could be sharing resources, it could be sharing regulatory duties, it could be sharing service responsibilities. So managerial consolidation could look like a variety of different things, but some potential candidates that we highlighted maybe some groupings of wells. If they group together, then maybe those groupings of wells could be managed all together. That's definitely an option. Or one grouping of wells, talking, and maybe it's just 2 managed together. There's just some various options to sharing resources.
Does Sigma get in your head on this, the managerial?
Does Sigma?
The State Groundwater Management Act, because you've got the individual districts setting up what they're going to do internally. And you're possibly crossing lines and stuff like that. It's managerial. I guess I don't see anything on Sigma.
Well, I mean, I'm not too sure because you're not changing the location of the water. You're not using anything more. You just might be having somebody managed a little bit better. I don't know exactly on that one. What I've seen when managerial consolidations are considered is because, especially when it comes to groupings of private wells, they usually don't have a board, or they don't have an entity that they're a part of, and they need somebody to group together, or they have formed a small mutual water company and they don't have enough operators, or they don't have a GM, or they don't have enough people. So they partner with a different mutual water company, and they share operators, or they share the same, people to do their financial stuff. It's just a way to help manage resources. And usually it's an agreement, or it could be a formal consolidation, but there's definitely some different options when it comes to managing resources. Not water, but like people resources. And the other option that we kind of touched on was emergency interties. So each agency would still be very separate, still managed separate and whatnot, but maybe they can have a connection to one another, that you open up the valve or whatnot in those times of need. So we looked at some options for that as well. Do they already have a presence of an intertie, which all of them say no. Okay, what's the distance between some of the agencies? Maybe this is another option. So Ada's Lodging, maybe they could have an intertie with Paso. The distance is the less than 3 miles, but it didn't meet the funding viability, but it's not that far away. Maybe they could put in a pipeline and just have an emergency intertie. There's definitely different things to think about rather than actual full consolidation. So this slide, wow, there's a lot of words on here. But basically it's just some things to consider when you're thinking about implementing a consolidation. It's really just talking about talking to your neighbors, having some outreach that is done. What are basically looking at the next steps to get and move forward with a potential consolidation. Looking at reporting practices and monitoring. Talking with, with your neighbors and talking with how are your supplies going, and really just focusing on having these conversations before a problem actually happens. That's kind of what these next steps are really kind of focusing on. That was it for my slideshow. Yes.
So this is really very good information.
Very high level.
I'm impressed, yeah. But the Board of Supervisors have announced that they want to build a lot more housing in unincorporated areas. I'm curious whether or not you get the grant, is this information going to be made accessible to your planning department, so that when they decide, oh, this is a really cool project, but wait a minute, there's no water, they can't do a will serve, right? Is this information going to be integrated into the planning process, or is it just sort of narrow surface getting the grant?
So Brendan or Courtney?
Gosh, a lot of things come to mind. We definitely work pretty closely with our planning department to share water planning information. So actually our super team meeting is tomorrow, so we'll be able to talk about that. I don't know if anyone's planning today, but our hazard mitigation plan update, we're hoping to have, interconnections to that in terms of mitigation strategies, and these being ideas to look at mitigation strategies. Our groundwater sustainability department's also on our super team. So going back to the SIGMA question, when that gets answered at some point of how they'll move forward with the different programs, management programs under SIGMA. This can be data for them to use and information to use, whether whoever the driver of those conversations will be. It might be different because SIGMA is happening in certain adjudications are happening others. County probably maybe some efforts in other areas and then water agencies themselves. So lots of, there's lots of avenues, and our goal is definitely to share this information.
The short answer is yes, it's available in all counties.
So this is a study that was funded by the state level, right?
Correct.
So are there next steps that you guys, or that there, it's being talked about with regard to putting together programs for how people can consolidate or not, or how they get grant funding, how to work things out in your camp?
We have a little bit of allocation left, and we're talking about, like kind of, yeah, roadmaps or further fleshing out, what would be the next steps for that, you know, the short list, I guess, of where to put our energy next. So to the extent that they could start to help write down some of those things, like Christine had walked through, and other, you know, things to look for in terms of, you know, what would need to be true for these consolidations to happen, basically. So that we are talking about using the last bit of funds for something like that. Otherwise, I think our hazard mitigation plan implementation strategies is where I see this fitting. And so once that's adopted or approved by FEMA and then also our board, then we'll be turning our attention to implementation of that hazard mitigation plan and trying to prioritize where to put energy into. But again, it's really going to rely on those that are interested in moving forward on these. So we'll, you know, help feed to water, but we cannot make them drink.
Is this going to be, the show is one great job. Are you going to set it out for everybody? That we can get a copy of the state of this on the screen?
Yeah, this should, the presentation I'll upload after. The full report should be on the meeting, online already. Thank you, okay. Yeah, so it's all available, and a link, it should be linked in the staff report as well. Yeah, I didn't want to print out 100 pages for every package.
Did that have because I'm glad to see because I have something. Did that have the links to figure out where the risk levels are calculated or how they're?
I will provide that
Yeah.
also. Yeah, maybe I will update the staff report or with that link, or something. I'll figure out a way to do that.
Those links should be in the report as well, as either a footnote to a table or as a footnote at the bottom of the page. We try to add as many links as possible.
Yeah, another thing I'll mention is just that this exercise has been really great for getting the conversation started about data.
Yes.
And making sure we all have the same data and ways to improve it. Like, I think we were talking about all the wells that are inside agency boundaries. So, you know, hopefully people can look at that and say, nope, sorry, those all, you know, aren't there anymore. Cause I'm a little wary of, you know, whether any of those wells have been abandoned or decommissioned. That's why we have a little disclaimer on the right here. So any support in terms of, you know, improving our data sets.
So that data is strictly like off the record of what you have at the county.
Yeah, you can go to our.
I would think.
County would be the
Sorry, I'm not sure if you can hear me from online. We lost audio.
Oh, we can hear you online.
Yeah, that's me online as a county employee. I'm hoping that they can hear us.
Okay,
Jenny,
Yeah, yes, it's coming through.
Okay, we can now hear you.
we're back. Thank you for your patience.
sorry about that. All right,
Did they want me to go?
yeah, Amy,
backwards?
No, I think I think we just missed the last minute there, so I think we could just do questions on
Yeah.
if there are any questions.
anybody online have any questions for the presenters?
Do we need to raise our hands to unmute or?
No, they're free to unmute.
Okay,
Okay, I'm not hearing.
you can
any-
unmute if you have a question.
Looks like somebody raised their hand.
Michelle does.
Hi, this is Michelle Frederick, and with the State Water Board. I just wanted to thank you. I've got to jump off, but thank you for the presentation. Thanks, Dan Tech. I thought it was really informative and really well done. I just want to kind of comment, feel free to adjust costs that make the most sense for your county. And, as you go forward in your planning efforts, your drought planning efforts, we wish you the best and let us know if you need anything additional data or clarification.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Sure. Thanks. Take care.
Anybody else, Joey? All right, thank you very much. We'll move on then to item 4, ongoing updates. Starting rain and reservoir report. Anybody jump in if you have anything on any of these
I
drought?
would just note for the rain and reservoir report, sorry, the full year report is also included for the last reporting year, July to June. If anyone's interested.
Drought updates.
The hazard mitigation plan has been submitted to Cal OES. Once they provided their comments and our admin team has responded to them, it will be sent to FEMA. Once FEMA has provided concurrence, then it would go to all of our jurisdictions or the county and the cities for adoption.
Anything else on drought updates? Groundwater basin management efforts? Flood control zones? Integrated regional water management?
Yeah, I'll note the Regional Water Management Group met this morning. And we are going to be initiating a call for projects, replacement for Project 3, the Central Coast Blue. The board directed us to come back to the board with a project or a suite of projects to replace that one. And so the RWMG met this morning to start that project replacement process. Materials will be sent out in the next couple days to officially open up, and we'll be accepting applications to the end of the month, till September 29th.
Is everything the county is doing in water being hit by federal money withdrawal? I mean, it seems all the agencies be losing money, and that's wondering whether the county is losing any kind of money on this water side.
Not related to IRWM, but we had a project in with FEMA BRIC to do drainage studies across the county, update drainage studies, and that program went away and we lost that opportunity. So
Is it losing time in terms of, because there are so many fewer people reviewing grant applications, it takes longer for the grants to be processed? That's happening in transportation.
yeah, I don't know specifically for that reason.
Okay, anything else on IRWM? Not master water report update?
I just provided a brief written update. We're just continuing to focus in and hone in how coordinating with the planning department and our groundwater sustainability department and focusing on similar to what we just discussed here, our local risk and vulnerability analysis. And I am looking forward to having Carollo here and presenting on the updates related to that project once we're ready, so.
State water project?
I'll note for that one.
Yeah.
Wes Thompson, our project manager for State Water, wanted to note that the board did adopt the policy framework. That was reviewed here in June, that was adopted in July.
DSAL. I believe we'll get an update from the DSAL team. And Courtney, that's important.
I just wanted to make a pitch for our upcoming online community meeting, September 15th at 5 p.m. So hopefully everyone saw the announcement. And we also have a public survey out. So thank you for helping to spread the word and taking the survey, and look forward to getting all your input on the 15th.
So we're free to bounce the invitation around.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
The more the merrier.
Online, I get the survey is available here, and I did it a couple of times, and nothing came up. So I will double check that. Please double check that.
I'm planning to send one reminder to our RAC list, and I'll make sure the link is working.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe.
you did, same issue.
I was able to access it, so maybe try again.
Thanks.
Okay, anything else on DSAL? Not, other various county water programs, policies, and, Eric.
Yes, under various county water programs, policies, et cetera, item 3 on next Tuesday's board consent agenda is the submit of a bid opening report for Salinas pressure pipeline repairs. Apparently the pipeline from Santa Margarita Reservoir through the mountain, there are actually 9 places that are vulnerable now to pressure type leaks. And this is simply acting on the first. And so questions can be raised by pulling the consent item or by discussing it with whoever's presenting the item. I just, I was just upstairs in County Government Center getting the agenda and taking a quick look at relevant items. So this, anyone who wants to dig into it further, look at the staff report for item 3 for next Tuesday.
Very good. Thank you, Eric. Anything else on county water programs, policies, and ordinances? It's not open reporting on water conservation opportunities and information.
Well, we do have one question online.
Sure.
From Steve Carter. Go ahead and unmute, Steve.
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just going back to the groundwater basin management efforts, I don't know if we discussed it at all, but while we were dark in August, they had the protest vote, or the 218 vote for management fees, and that was on August 1st, and the protest actually was successful. And so the 218 fees were defeated by those that would have been charged. And so now it's back to the joint powers members in order to figure out how they're going to fund the Sigma required GSP efforts. So the annual plans, the 5-year plans going forward. And so the city of Paso Robles, I believe they have funding. The county will have to also provide funding for their portion of the management fees, and the 2 water districts are, they have assessments on their members, and they're using those. They've committed those funds to go ahead and manage the GSP for the next year anyway. So that was a significant action that happened on the Paso Basin.
Thank you, Steve. All right, anybody have anything else under ongoing updates? If not, then we'll move on to future agenda items. Any future agenda items people wish to place on the list? Eric.
This may or may not be an agenda item, but it would be interesting. Hopefully, we're going to be moving into a rainy season, hopefully a generous one. And the first flush phenomenon needs a lot of attention. There has been a lot of oil and gunk from tires and whatnot deposited on pavements of all kinds. And it tends to run off into streams and the ocean. And will the peak first flush be monitored for its impacts downstream? Do we have enough of a program to catch that stuff and both document where it's a problem and then solve the problem where it's documented? So I think the topic of first flush, try saying first flush 5 times anyway. The topic of first flush is ripe for consideration if there's anyone who is qualified to present on it.
All right. Any other suggested agenda items?
I will note, we are planning our October meeting. Our main presentation will be the desal project team doing a workshop. Right.
Yeah, it's kind of the results from our community meeting, the input we're getting and where we're at in the study.
Very good. All right, then public comment for items not on the agenda. Anybody online there, Joey? All right, then we'll adjourn the meeting. We will see everyone in about 4 weeks in October.
Thank you.
Thank you.